I grew up literally without running water. We had a small house that my dad built with my grandfather, and they never really got around to or could afford putting plumbing inside. So we had an outhouse and wood burning stove and the whole thing, which as a kid I thought was really cool because it was almost like camping. I was pretty fortunate in spite of pretty disrupted childhood with my mom bailing out of that situation and father dying shortly thereafter. I was one of those kids that probably shouldn't have gone to school, but it turned out that education was the pathway for me. It ended up being the huge opportunity that was a life changer and gave me a chance to um, literally dialing forward 20, 30 years later, run two Fortune 500 companies.
I'm familiar with the not having means. In your book, you tell of a passage of having government cheese. I have a scar on my wrist. I cut myself cutting a big block of government cheese, and the knife slipped and
But
just gashed me on my wrist.
those big yellow blocks,
Big
they
yellow
were awesome.
blocks. And when I saw that, I was like, "Oh my, he gets it. He understands." I relate to you when I was reading about that, the government cheese, as well as one of the things that really struck me as you were writing this book is the very early part of your life. And one passage you were talking about at the age of 12, you were coming home from school and you saw a condemned sign on your home.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine at the age of 12 what kind of impact that may have had on you.
Yeah. First of all, I didn't know the word. I didn't know what the word condemned meant. I had to look it up. And I was like, what does that mean? I know it didn't look like it was good. It was a big red sign, Town of Grafton on it. It turned out that my dad had been sick and the visiting nurse would come down from the town to help take care of him. We didn't have running water in the house. That house was kind of literally, we had cardboard boxes as
Mm.
sheetrock because it
Wow.
was cheaper. So they were stapled up against the wall. My dad, I guess, at one point was going to paint or put wallpaper up, but we could literally see the Heinz 57 some
On on the
cardboard.
wall.
Yeah. So the visiting nurse turned us in basically and said, these people are living in impossible conditions. It's not good for his health. My dad was needing extra care. So they unfortunately condemned the house. And I was at that point forced to choose between going to live with my mother in the trailer park, or I had a brother who had become a truck driver and over the road driver. And he actually let me go and stay with his family for a little while until my dad eventually passed and ended up with my mom.
And then you also talk about in your book that when you passed, he was your fishing buddy and your best friend,
Yeah.
and that you had long talks, some that you couldn't fully grasp at the time, and you get to appreciate them later. What was that like when you're looking back and writing this book and you're recalling those memories of your early childhood with your father being so impressionable? What was that like for you as you carried those conversations with you forward in your education and your professional career?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I talk about adversity a lot today, especially if I'm talking to young kids who are going through troubles that are even worse than what I may have faced as a child. But, we face adversity and we think, oh, this is horrible. Why me? Why am I going through all this stuff? But later on in life, I was able to look back and realize that period of time I had with my dad was something that most people don't have the privilege of doing because I had 6 years from the time I was 6 or 7 years. My mom left when I was around 5. She just basically, I'm out of here, and she was gone. So I had from the time I was 5 years until the time I was 12, exclusively with my dad. And
Mm.
that's a really unusual circumstance. He would take me fishing, he would take me camping. We got to do guy stuff that most children living in a normal family don't get to do. Yeah, it was awesome. He gave me some great lessons. He understood the challenges of working in a factory and not having enough money. He didn't know the path to having more freedom. What he used to tell me is not about money. He didn't care about money, but what he cared about was freedom. He wanted the freedom to do the things he wanted to do. He loved to travel and he wanted to travel the world, but he was tied to his factory and his job to take care of me and to take care of himself, basically. So that was his message to me. The one thing that they can't take away from is your education. You take your money, take your stuff, can't take your knowledge. And yeah, as fatalistic as that sounds, it was great advice and it made me get very serious about learning.